Welcome, everybody, to another amazing interview. Today, we are talking with Evan Schaefer. Famously, I mean, maybe his one claim to fame. No, his most biggest claim to fame. Yeah, it's a claim to fame. He is one of Rich Ramos's former students. Can you believe it? Rich Ramos, the legend, the icon. He's influenced a lot of us to stay in this field. So thanks, Rich. Say it with me. Say it with me. Thanks, Rich.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. Absolutely.
Thanks, Rich. All right,
Don't
well,
hold it against me. Don't hold it against me, Jason.
yeah. All right, so Evan has his bachelor's in music education, but from 2010 to 2014, worked at Arizona State University as a student activities advisor, advising the programming board and overseeing large-scale student events. 2013, 2015, on the NACA National Block Booking team as the coordinator, and spent the entire time designing and transitioning from paper to virtual, which was pretty cool. From 2014 to 2015, you left Arizona State to join Arizona Super Bowl host committee. That must have been fun. And you produced Super Bowl 49 when it was in Phoenix. Awesome Super Bowl. It must have been a blast. We can talk about that later. 2015 to 2016, worked as a business improvement district specialist in downtown Tempe, doing all the large-scale events, parades, and activities. That also, Evan, must have been a blast. But starting in 2016 to the present, we are the COO of Degy Entertainment. Please welcome to the stage, Evan Schaefer. Wow, you've been everything in your life has been live, in person, people showing up, big stages, right? You are a guy who likes the live, big event. Am I right in saying that?
You are correct.
Yeah,
You
and
are correct.
another fun fact about you, so that we know that you love the stage, was the fact that you were wait, what is this? What is this? You were 4 years member of the show choir.
Yeah, in high school.
4 year member of show. Can you show us a move?
You know what? It's kind of like riding a bike, but at the same time, there's a level of coordination that you have to do to keep up with it. I don't think I'm still there. I was, right, but I don't think I'm still there anymore. But waking up at being a four-sport athlete, doing early morning practices both with sports as well as going then to music, and teaching everybody the importance of what jazz hands are and blades, and the fluidity of movements per se. But I don't have the step that I used to. I weigh just a little bit more than what I used to as well, so my movements are a bit slower.
Can you give me a lesson in these are blades?
So yeah, these are blades.
Okay.
Okay, when they're close together.
Yeah.
And then these are jazz.
Oh, okay.
And then a lot of times they do the jazz also flicker.
This is the jazz flicker.
Yeah. Well, I called it the jazz flicker because that was the only way to get my members to understand the difference between standard jazz and then move your fingers.
Right. And blades.
And blades.
When do you use blades? When is an opportunity to use blades? Just anytime someone's coming towards you?
Yeah, right. In a kung fu fighting type of ensemble, or like a symptomatic piece, or also presenting. Like in the ballads, particularly, you're doing a lot of
Right.
Presenting of people. But yeah, this is to show how excited you are. That's why when it first came on, it was like, ah!
Well, welcome, Evan Schaefer.
Exactly. See, you got it.
I got it, but the visually on screen, that's actually kind of fun too.
Yeah.
With our little stage. All right, well, but life has changed for all of us in the last few months, and you've done an amazing job of being at the forefront of really creating amazing stuff. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing right now.
So we, personally and professionally, it's been challenging, to say the least, because I am one that thrives in the in-person. I'm one that thrives the adrenaline rush of being, right there, side stage, or, backstage, or even just in a production office somewhere, where knowing that everything is happening according to plan, having that feeling that everything's going great, is an adrenaline rush that's really hard to replicate in the virtual space. So having to essentially pivot to the virtual space initially when this first started back in March, not knowing how long it was going to last. So trying to determine, are we going to pivot or do we have to adapt? And over a certain amount of time, we just realized, you know what, we've got to adapt to it. And so how can we, as opposed to making these temporary fixes, how can we make them permanent in terms of the offerings that we have, knowing that the live entertainment industry as we know it is not going to go back to what it is for a very long time. So offering virtual programs through customized virtual platforms is what we've been doing to kind of help people get out of the typical Zoom, the Zoom room. Prior to going to all virtual, I actually used Zoom when advancing shows with clients to show my screen. But now being in, and I would use Zoom maybe once, twice, 3 times a week. That's been quadrupleized, octified, multitude-wise, where every meeting now is in Zoom, as you're probably experiencing, as well as a lot of people, a lot of viewers here watching this. So having to learn all of the elements of what Zoom offers, all the while still being expected to be an expert, quote unquote, in how to produce them is a lot, right? So we're all trying to find our way to adapt to our new normal, our new reality, at the same time at being asked to be an expert in an area that we're learning simultaneously.
Sure.
So it's been a humongous learning curve for me. I thought I was good with technology before all of this started, but when you're thrown into a crash course of, diving in and talking about what custom stream links are and virtual camera links and all of the different elements that go into virtual programming, I didn't really know the first thing. I mean, in comparison, turning on a computer was the amount of knowledge that I had in the tech space as it relates to virtual programming.
It relates to virtual programming, but you are the guy who transitioned the block booking paper into online. So you knew some things. You knew some things.
Yes, but working with a web developer, a very talented web developer, that I would simply say, this is the functionality that we're looking for based upon the different work groups. Transitioning the block booking program took several months because we have in the association, the NACA organization, we have a lot of associates and a lot of school members that have been doing something for so long that that's the only thing that they know. So it took a lot of town hall meetings and a lot of just individual meetings to kind of ask them what they're looking for in a system, and then more so put it together in a trial phase, and then we essentially from there would meet again with them at the regional level and say, this is what we're looking at, this is what the system looks like, this is what the interface is going to look like on your end, how does this work with your business? And it started out and it served a really good purpose. Now that we've morphed into, and I've obviously been out of it for several years, but the team now has really done a tremendous job of launching the NACA 24/7 365 component. And really elevated that experience overall, which I think is awesome.
It's very cool. Yes. And so you mentioned that earlier you mentioned the energy and the adrenaline and the experience of being in that live setting with people. So because you thrive on that, what are you doing that makes you feel good, and what advice would you give to others who have had to make this switch? What are the things that you're putting into your life, like on a personal level, not on a digital level, but Evan Schaefer?
So, I have actually sought the help of professionals in some aspects in some of this regard, because I'm not ashamed to say it, because it really did have an impact on me personally, to the point where I needed to talk to somebody that was outside of the industry that could help me look at it from a 30,000 foot level. Being an operations guy like I am, I look at the granular. I can look at a 30,000 foot level, but it takes a hard time to get there. And knowing, having a different opinion and a different kind of viewpoint really helped me to look at this in the totality of what's our end game, what's our end goal. And so for me, believe it or not, I started to look at virtual programming differently. So it's not the same adrenaline rush as you would get when the main headliner walks out on the stage and the crowd goes wild, because obviously in the virtual space, there is no crowds going wild. But there is still a certain level of adrenaline that I get, even from, if we're producing a show through our FanFX platform, our customizable platform, right before you hit go live into the social media outlet that you're going to use, there's still that level of adrenaline that you have, because the minute you do that, you're now live. It's now on the interwebs for anybody to see.
Right.
And so if at any one moment something could go wrong, and it has, right? Like,
yeah.
we know nobody's perfect in this aspect.
Right.
But there is still that adrenaline rush. But motivating me, like the motivation really comes from looking at where we're going to end up. But also, I'm the type of person that, again, from the 30,000 foot level, being able to understand that I'm learning something that's going to make me a more well-rounded professional as I go through my career.
Right.
And, being able to speak to, and I think a lot of people will be able to speak to once this is over with, the big question on everybody's mind is, what does the virtual space look like? And I think to a certain extent, it's going to be an alternative. It's going to be, when you're going to offer to an artist, your offer could include indoor, outdoor, or virtual. Like, in all actuality, because we're setting the space and we're creating this path and we're pioneering this new process that, not necessarily by choice, but by overall just being forced into it, that it could very well just become an option for some folks.
Way of thinking about it. So any of my in-person events coming up in the future, we could say that it's actually, I can have a global audience, right?
Absolutely.
I may be performing at Simmons College in Iowa, but we're going to plop down the cameras, we're going to connect to the internet, and this live in-person event for the students at your college is now going out to all the alumni. Mm-hmm. Like, oh wow, like, what a great idea, right?
Think about it from this perspective too, Jason. Block booking has now gotten a lot larger.
Yeah.
Because in the virtual space, a school in Wisconsin can now block book you in California, and they could theoretically be almost the same program. I mean, obviously you customize them for each campus, but because of time zone differences and everything else, you yourself as a performer can now make the decision, you know what, I can do 3 programs in a day. I have the ability to do that. And you make that choice, but now you're essentially, based on time zones and everything else, that option exists for you.
Well, here's an interesting thing, and I don't want to talk about myself other than this. I did 2 events on the same day at 8 p.m. in different cities, right? Right?
Yeah.
I did 2 events on the same day at different campuses at 8 p.m. And I apologize that where I am right now. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
They're gonna find me one of these times. I am pretty secluded in this basement, but eventually they're gonna find me. Like, they're looking. But that's it.
One of our artists that we had for one of our Friday Night Live programs, believe it or not, was at a live. He had a live show, socially distanced show at a bar and grill in his hometown. Mm-hmm. He was also on our program, but what he did is he had the laptop in front of him where he was coming into our stream, and he essentially took a 15-minute break, came into the room, we rechecked his levels, and then we went live with the program. And his set was actually both live and virtual. So he was basically.
He has an altar. Yeah. He has an avatar.
No, we haven't gotten to the avatar. We haven't gotten to the avatar quite yet. Well, we're talking about just bringing this artist into our virtual platform, going to our social media pages and going to a global audience, but also performing live to this bar and grill area. I mean, It was the first time that we've done that. It was incredible because it shows the level of flexibility now that performing artists have.
Right. I don't think we fully understand. I don't think I fully understand the level of the virtual reality that you're talking about is different than the virtual reality that's in my head and maybe in the head of many others. I think we have to see what you're talking about, maybe, but you're talking like when your performer was live. When I say I can be live and then I can be virtual, I'm live, but then there's a picture of me going out there to the world. You're talking about a world that you've created in the internet. You actually, Evan Schaefer, have created this thing, this place. You created a world.
Yeah, for lack of better terminology.
You created a digital world, right?
We have we've spent a lot of time over the last several months, and we're having to relearn a different world, no pun intended,
Sure,
altogether in regards to how we can produce events in these spaces and having auditoriums that look like auditoriums, having expo halls that look like expo halls, and having all of these different spaces that look like they are, and essentially it operating similar to a video game, a very immersive experience where you can dive right in and create your avatar to look like you, or create your avatar to look like somebody else.
Just like that. Okay.
And just experience it live.
That's amazing. So is the next step, like, I love traveling and using Airbnb. Like, will there be an Airbnb? Can I rent a room? If I want to see the show, if I know that I'm going to go to a concert on Friday and I know that I'm going to go to a concert on Saturday, can I just stay?
You could. It's a 24/7 campus as long as you are booked in the space, and as long as you have got the access. It is a 24/7 space. Now, I will tell you that we do have offices that if you want to work from, you're more than welcome to work from them. We also have green room spaces for when we start doing concerts. We've got 3 different stages. Full stages, one on a beach, one on a soccer field, and then another one on a rooftop that you can essentially, on the sides, then you can overlook the entire world.
That's really cool. That's cool.
And the good news is that the weather is always perfect.
The weather's always perfect. But, I mean, I can rent an office? I can have an office there?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, okay. We'll talk after our
absolutely. I can see you. I can see a virtual you with the glasses. I can see it, and it looks great.
I'd make a great cartoon, right? Hey, you said something earlier, and I didn't mean to gloss over it, but I think it's really important that we all in this community acknowledge it. And you said that you spoke to somebody outside of your inner circle because, and we're talking about how you feel, right? Maybe we'll call it mental health, because that is
absolutely
what it is, right? There was such a big transition, such a change in your life. And by sharing it, I thank you and I honor you for that, because you make it okay for everybody else out there who may be going through something and not being able to handle it, that it is okay to check in with somebody outside of our world. Do you have recommendations for folks on that?
Absolutely. So I've experienced 2 very large traumas in my life. One was losing my mother at the age of 15. The other one losing my father at the age of 20. So in the eyes of the government, you're sitting in the financial aid office. I was going to be a senior, filling out my FAFSA, and the director of financial aid looks at me and goes, "So in the eyes of the government, you're considered an orphan." And I will never ever forget that, because it's something that stuck with me and is still with me. But having gone through those traumas, one could argue that the experiences that we felt in the last 4 to 5 months have been incredibly traumatic. Mm-hmm. Whether it's being furloughed from your job, whether it's being fired from your job, or downsized, or anything really that's happened, or you've lost a loved one due to COVID, or you're just concerned, scared, and anxious about being infected with COVID. Like, all of that is a reality. Being able to talk with somebody in a professional sense, in a talk therapy type of way, really helped me to open up and really understand that the trauma that I experienced when I was younger is actually impacting, and I'm reliving some of that now, right? So it's helped me to understand that, and every day isn't a bright day in the virtual sense, right? Like, it seems monotonous to a certain extent. You're in Zoom for 8 hours, or you're doing other things for an extended period of time, and it gets to be a lot. Towards the end of the day, I'll just start calling people and I'll say, I want to move this meeting to the phone because I've had enough. But being able, the hardest step for me, Jason, was to acknowledge that I wasn't perfect. And the hardest step for me was acknowledging that I needed the help. and that it wasn't something that I could just read from an article that I looked up. It was an actual process, and it's a functionality now of my life that I've been missing, that once you find it, you start to live life in a completely different way, and you start to look at everything from a completely different vantage point. And it's been eye-opening to me to revisit the traumatic experiences that I've had when I was a kid, and now that I think about them, feel almost at peace because of the way that, you know, my continuous kind of, or my therapy sessions have ended up. And so, not to obviously get too much into, you know, my therapy sessions, but to more so go on the fact that if you need the help, seek it. Whether it's professional, whether it's, you know, calling up somebody. The one thing I will advocate for is that somebody that's an objective third party, that's not in your day to day, that commiserating pain and commiserating, you know, stress isn't going to help anybody, because all it does is just launch you into we're never going to get out of this, and we're never going to get back to where we were, or I'm never going to be happy, versus talking to somebody that's an objective third party that can help you reevaluate that and really get you to look at different scopes and different aspects, because at the end of the day, it's all about perspective. So that's my elevator pitch, I guess.
Thank you. Sincerely.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that means a lot to me, and it means a lot to, I bet, everybody. I think everyone needs to hear that. And
in this industry, only the strong survive, and you're not going to be your strongest self unless you're operating at, you know, all cylinders.
Yeah. But even so, maybe you would not have explored that had this not happened, right? So you're given a chance right now to pivot not just your programming, but the Evan Schaefer journey.
Absolutely, because you know, because I was going, you know, advancing 200 to 300 shows a year all over the world.
Yeah.
Your ability to think about these things is substantially limited. But when you're launched into the virtual space, you're having to think outside the box, and you're now thinking, do I even want to do this? Right? Like,
right.
Is this an industry I even want to continue to be in now that we're, you know, doing this? But knowing that there's an end game, right? Knowing that it's not going to last forever, and making sure that me as a person is also taking, you know, doing my own part. You'll see, you know, not to turn this political, but, you know, wearing a mask, not wearing a mask, do your own part, right? The details are there, the statistics are there. Do your part to make sure that you're helping to mitigate this and get rid of it just as fast as everybody else.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, it was really just understand, like, having that extra time to think. Right. And once I started thinking, just based on how my brain works, it was evident to me that I needed to go back into it to essentially become happier.
Right. That's very helpful. I mean, when you mentioned the 30,000, like to look at it from above, I think it's also one thing I've really been thinking about is we need to consider why we're doing these things in the first place, right? You have a background in higher ed. You wanted to be a teacher. You care about people, right? The events that you are creating, the events that we are creating, aren't the events themselves. We're not creating the events for the sake of the events. We're trying to connect people to each other. We're trying to engage students so that they feel connected to the campus and the community. We're trying to engage students so that connection helps them stay in school. We're engaging students so that they then hopefully graduate and don't choose another option, right? Because their life, statistically, if you graduate from college, you have more opportunity, which will lead to possibly having more financial independence, which will lead to your kids having a better education. But I know that, like, you and everybody else that is in higher education is working towards helping the students grow, right? And if we go back into, like, why are you doing what you're doing in your chair today? It's because you're going to help a lot of students graduate, right? That's what's going to happen, right? The event is the event. It doesn't matter if I'm hosting a mic or coffee house, or if there's a comedian on stage on campus. We are trying to bring people together to feel connected as humans, I think there's a larger purpose to all of this, and there's what I've been calling it, and it's the higher purpose of higher ed, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and I'm excited to move that forward. I'm excited to instill that in the advisors and all the folks who work professionally in higher ed and in the association, that what we're doing is important for a higher purpose, right? So to not get caught up in the minuscule, we have to work very hard to get our events right. We have to get the data right. We have to get the image right. We have to decide where the logo goes. But we're doing it for a much higher purpose. So you're bringing up getting perspective on your life is helping me understand to get perspective on why we do what we do, right? And so thank you for that.
And I think some of to launch into that, or to kind of branch off of that, Jason, some of the groups that even you had started in terms of the online engagement, platforms and through social media like Facebook, for example, it's really an idea mill, right? It's I'm thinking about doing this. Has this worked for anybody else? Because we're all learning. Why recreate the wheel? That's why you'll see a bunch of people sharing resources about student organizations and how they can host meetings in either the virtual space or what guidelines they have to follow for doing it in the real space. I haven't once seen anybody say, no, I can't share this because it's only specific to my institution. Everybody's all about like, yes, share it here, send it, email me, I want to be included. And I think that's awesome. I think it's honestly, I think personally, and you please correct me if I'm wrong, but even when I was in higher ed, every school was very siloed to a certain extent, where it's like anything that happens at ASU only applies to ASU. Sure. And it never really, it doesn't apply to anywhere else. It doesn't apply to anybody else, but it truly does. But being in the virtual space now, where everybody's kind of, feeling around in the dark, for lack of a better terminology, it's becoming evident that everybody's kind of stepping out of their own comfort zones and really engaging with other people in their profession to figure out how they can make themselves better, how they can make their programs better. To go back to your original point of how can we elevate the experience for the students so that at the end of the day they're getting what they paid for realistically.
Right. It's interesting that what you just said made me think of another thing, like your Arizona State bubble that you thought you were in. Like, we're the only school in the country doing a welcome week, obviously, right?
Yep.
But right now, like, because everyone's sharing their calendars, and it's a great asset to everybody. Like, oh, wait a minute, you're having a family weekend and you're doing all this programming. What a great idea! I've not thought about doing that, right? And then, oh, look at this Halloween party. You're doing candy? What a novel idea! You never thought about candy and Halloween,
right?
But it's really like, but this is the one thing that I've said was, as a touring performer, and I've been to a lot of campuses, is that I see new advisors trying to reinvent the wheel. And I just was at another campus yesterday that was 2 hours away, but you don't realize you don't need to reinvent the wheel because they've already got it. And if it now versus a year ago, that 2 hour drive might as well have been like Paris to Toledo, right? But now Paris and Toledo are neighbors, and now you and I are neighbors, and now those campuses are like, wait a minute, you're doing a welcome week? That's cool, right? And so that reality that we're bringing together is something that I think touring performers have been seeing for a long time, and haven't really been able to explain what we were seeing, right? And so this
absolutely,
yeah.
And I think that also goes into the fact that you're having to open your playbook now, and I think the biggest challenges in terms of the bubbles that you were talking about, at least from my perspective, is that I had a lot of colleagues and even students that would go to conferences and they would come back and I'd say, how was the ed session? Oh, it was great, but it doesn't apply here. We're too big. Newsflash, it does apply to you. You have to apply it to the larger scope of what you're responsible for. Yeah. It's not going to be a roadmap for you, and it's going to take some time. But what really helps is to take that model and see how you implement it. That's how you can put your fingerprints on it. Don't beat your head against the wall trying to come up with something that somebody already's done that you can essentially take and kind of shape for your particular institutional environment, your institutional culture, what have you. Utilize each other. Call them up and say, hey, I've got some ideas. Let me run it by you. I agree with you. Right. I absolutely agree with you.
Bob Dylan, some people have heard of him. When he was first starting as a songwriter, and this was very acceptable in the folk world. Right now, in the culture that we live in, you're like, oh, you're copying somebody. In the folk music world, in the world, the reason that folk music got passed down generation to generation is because you were basically playing cover songs. But then you would change them, you would adapt them. So Evan, you wrote a song. I love your song. I'm going to learn your song. But then when I sing it over here, I'm going to change the words to fit my city, to fit my town, to fit the farming community that I'm a part of. Right. And that's the evolution. Like and in a way, and this Derek Sivers is the guy who started CD Baby, which was a really great platform for independent artists to sell CDs. He said something. He's like, if you're trying to write a song and you don't know how to write a song, just copy exactly what somebody else does. Right? Copy exactly what somebody else does, because in that process you will change it. Yeah. You will add your flavor to it, right? And that's what so all those ed sessions that you're talking about, that people are like, this doesn't apply to us. It does, because you're going to take it, you're going to do this to it, and then it's going to be yours. Like this. What is this? These are blades.
Yep, blades.
These are jazz hands.
Jazz. Like a Dr. Evil kind of thing. You know, like a Mike Myers Dr. Evil little.
When I was a little kid, this is a joke my dad always told when I had friends over. And he would go, hey, what's this? And my friends would be like, I don't know, what is it? He's like, it's the exact opposite of this. Like, dad jokes.
Dad jokes, absolutely.
But I tell it now. Like, anyway, now that we're talking about hands. All right, Evan, it's been awesome hanging out with you.
Absolutely.
What is, what's your go-to karaoke song?
When I was in college, it was "Whoop There It Is" by Tag Team. I know that
Do you know the verses, or I only know the chorus?
I know the verses. Well, you listen to it long enough, and when we were in high school, it was no.
I'm checking the time, and we've got time for this.
No, we don't. No, you know what? I think you're Central. I'm Pacific. But yeah, like it was I mean, going up through high school, that used to be one of the intro songs, like coming out for basketball. And so you'd hear it 30 days out of the, 3 or 4 month time frame as a part of your just opening music. You start to learn it after a while.
Right. Is there anything lyrically that's not family friendly?
No, not for that. Okay. That was on the Jock Jams original, like the OG Jock Jams album.
Okay. All right. Well, then I have a challenge for you. This is not singing. This is you getting a little bit closer to your camera and staring into the camera and just doing the first verse as a poem.
All right.
Do you want to dedicate?
I'm gonna have to bring this up.
You want to dedicate it to anybody?
No, because it's already kind of weird with no like audio background anyway. And by the way, I have the fix my face enabled, but just forgive me because it might be an internet connection. Okay, just want to throw that out there.
That's funny.
But it's Tag Team back again. Check it, wreck it, let's begin. Party on, party people. Let you know, take teams in the house. No. You know what? It's hard to do when it's not like boom, boom, boom.
Let's do it.
Here's some noise. DC's in the house. Jump, jump, rejoice. There's a party over here, a party over there. Wave your hands in the air, shake the derriere, which I'm not going to do. These three words mean getting busy. Whoop, there it is. Hit me. And then the chorus.
There it is. That was amazing. Yeah, you did it. That's awesome.
You know what? Poems. I may be a poet someday.
Right.
Just, I may just notch that up. Notch that up.
Well, here's the thing. Remember, just steal it.
Touche.
Rewrite a couple words. What would you put in place of whoop?
Nowadays, if something flubs, I always say womp, like womp womp. So it could be like womp womp. There it is, which changes the entire scope of the song. right?
Wah, wah.
Yeah, like womp womp. There it is. You did it again.
Oh, too funny. All right, Evan. Well, hey, jazz hands.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for everything. It's great to see
Thank
you.
you, sir.
Let's look
Always
in the
good to see
camera. Look in the camera. Lots of love. Thanks for everything.
Thank you, sir.
Boom. Boom.